Hey everybody, welcome to the show. And today I get to be with my friend Joel Swanson, who is an expert EOS implementer, emphasis on the expert. Welcome to the show, Joel.
Thank you, Johnny.
I appreciate you sitting with me today. I get the chance to talk to just amazing people. Joel is a thinker. He's got an incredible mind, and so I'm hoping to tease that out for you guys a bit today. Joel, do you mind telling us a defining moment in your life?
Yeah, there's been numerous defining moments, but the very first thing that comes to mind is my first international missions trip when I
Mm-hmm.
was 13, probably. And I grew up relatively privileged. And so going to a place where people didn't have privilege, but then also seeing that they could be just as happy or happier than the people that I lived around,
Yeah,
and that they loved Jesus just as much or more
yeah,
than the rich white people that tend to congregate, and rich is obviously a relative term, but
sure,
comparative,
sure.
you know, the, the society that I mostly grew up in. And that was pretty transformative. In one situation there, my dad he's retired now, but he was a physician, and somebody from the local church heard that there was an American doctor and asked the American doctor to come and see her son. And so I don't remember why, but my dad took me with and got to go visit this woman and the son who was dying, and my dad telling her, there's nothing that I can do, and even if we could get the kid back to the States, he's too far gone. And
Yeah,
then and that has a pretty profound impact on a 13-year-old.
yeah,
And so that's not like a good news happy story,
mm-hmm.
but when you talk about what really defines you, that's a big one.
How did it change you?
I think it made me realize that we, and you can define we however you want, don't have all the answers. Jesus really is universal. Many years later, I went to seminary, so pastor school, and one of the things I remember from seminary was reading. I don't remember who this author was, but he said the gospel is so rich and so complex that we will never fully understand it until it's been passed through the lens and filter of every culture that's ever existed.
Oh my gosh.
So I'll say that again. The
Oh,
gospel is so rich and so complex that we will never fully understand it until it's been passed through the lens and filter of every culture that's ever existed. And
man,
that,
man.
we don't have the answers, and that doesn't mean that we're wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but it does mean that just because we grew up privileged in whatever way that means, and we get to choose which version of the Bible we read from. And I think about how much money am I saving for retirement rather than whether or not I can feed my children.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that somehow my culture has a corner on the market of reality and understanding Jesus. And
Man.
we can I believe in entering into a culture as a guest,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty freeing to be able.
Yeah, what I love about that is that it honors other cultures um, as non optional. That God created cultures, right, in order to usher in a fullness of the experience and the understanding of His Son.
I love
Which,
the way you said that. Like, it's
yeah,
cultures are not. It's not like God created my culture and then had some leftovers, and so He put together something else.
yeah,
It's like all cultures are honored and created by God, and all people are honored and created by God.
and have something to show us,
Yes,
right? Like to the person who wants to take it all in, like really wants to eat the buffet, like the big meal. Part of that is, man, like being a guest, right? Um, and understanding with humility that other people, somebody who does this really well, Jamie Winship, who wrote the book Living Fearless. I talk about him a lot. He's had a big impact on me, but he did a lot of ministry in Muslim countries where it was illegal to be doing it. Um, and he was incredibly effective because he wasn't trying to convert Muslims into evangelical Christians. He was trying to live a transformed life that invited other people into transformation. And that was a language that was understood. That language was understood, often without him having to do the things that get missionaries in trouble, right? And yet there's like crazy revivals happening and crazy, so many people coming. And then there's also so much he's learning from what happens when a Muslim comes to Christ and encounters Christ, and maybe wouldn't even say they're not a Muslim anymore, right? Maybe wouldn't even say that, but are having an interactive experience with the living Christ, and and then he's learning. So, gosh, dude, and probably there are a million different stories of that kind of thing happening in the most unexpected of places because of who Jesus is and what he does to the heart of people. So anyway, thank you for sharing that beautiful defining moment. Now, can you tie that at all into, I guess, any sense of calling that you feel now in life?
Yeah, I think that I believe in entering a culture as a guest.
Yeah.
And I have zero interest in going to see the Eiffel Tower or doing whatever tourists do. But going somewhere and being a true guest in someone else's culture is something that I think is important and not done enough from a learning standpoint. And I can tie a lot of that really back to that first missions trip when I was 13.
Yeah.
I recently, about 6 months ago, got introduced to a company that became my client that's Amish. Being able to enter into Amish culture as a guest has been super cool.
Yeah.
And hearing how they run their business and how and they've told me many times, like, Amish isn't a religion, it's a lifestyle choice. And so I'm learning a ton about, okay, what does it really mean to be Amish and to be an entrepreneur at the same time, and see how that's connected.
Wow.
And being able to go there as a guest is pretty cool. And I did my seminary internship in India, and my wife came with me because my internship was going to end about 3 weeks before we got married. She's like, well, if you're going to India, I'm going to India. And I said, okay. And so being able to go and the reason I went was to observe a lot of ministries and learn, like, what are really the best practices in mission.
Yeah.
And because we in the United States don't have a corner on the market of, oh, this is what obviously works best. And so I went to India to really shadow a bunch of different organizations and say, how do you do ministry here, and how does it work from an organizational standpoint, from an operational standpoint. And I learned a ton. I learned a ton from these ministries about what works and what doesn't work. And none of them went to Harvard,
Mm-hmm.
but they all love Jesus and they've got really good ideas, which you don't get if you go in saying I've got all the answers.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like it was humbling. Like that, when you talk about that initial experience you had, right? That's your defining moment. And then you talk about like even being with your dad and being a part of like such a tender moment. It sounds like that was humbling, and that you learned something, like being a guest even. That's a humble posture, right? I'm not coming to save you. I'm not coming to fix everything that you do wrong with the way that I do things, which is obviously better, but I'm going to come as a guest. There's a humility in that gesture, I think, would you say that that's necessary? I would say, yeah. Would you say it's necessary in order to have a positive engagement with people outside of your own culture?
I wouldn't be arrogant enough to say that I know what's necessary, but I know that it has helped me. And I feel like when I enter into another culture, even if that's just with this Amish client that's a 2-hour drive for me,
yeah,
I feel like people are more welcoming of me.
Yes.
because they can read, they can smell that I'm not there to tell them they're doing it wrong. I'm there
Right.
to learn.
Right.
So does that apply to everybody? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's certainly been true for me.
How do you balance the fact that you actually are generally coming in to fix things, though? Right? So you're coming in as a guest, but you're also coming in with a knowledge set, that they're obviously hiring you for, that they don't have.
I mean, it's a good question, but I think that the division is that, Johnny, I have some clients that I could run their businesses. I have some clients that I struggle to follow their conversations. I've got one client that they move money, and so they borrow money from this set of people and they lend it to this set of people, and they're always talking about banks and this. And I understand what they're saying enough to follow the conversation, but I don't understand what they're saying enough to be able to have an opinion, even, let alone say you're doing it wrong.
Right.
I've got a client that has parts in a Curiosity rover on Mars. Okay, I can't speak truth into that.
Yeah.
My role in what I do isn't to say, I've seen this before and I'm doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. I'm not a consultant. I don't know how to run your business. What I'm here to do is teach you a system and help you get everybody talking to each other and get everybody aligned around a common vision and teach people how to execute. And I do have expertise in that, but that's not a subject matter expertise in your business. I don't know how to run your business, Johnny. You know how to run your business. I can help you align your people and figure out the best ways to communicate those things. But that's universally applicable to all groups of people, even if it's not a business.
Yeah. Yeah. So good, man. So then when do you feel most in your sweet spot in the work that you do?
When it gets really messy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when everything goes right, that's fun, but it also doesn't feel like I'm earning my paycheck in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
But when I go into a situation with a client and it may be the team or it may be a person or maybe two people on the team that things aren't working or they're at odds. I work with a few churches and I've had situations where people on the leadership team, and you'd think, oh, we're all believers, we all follow Jesus, this is going to be easy. Nope, we're people. And where things get messy and I can come in and help people create clarity for themselves, not me stepping in and saying, here's what needs to happen, but guiding them and creating their own clarity and figuring it out for themselves. That's where I feel like the days just fly by. I mean, that's what I was born to do in a sense.
Yeah. So would you say then that, because I've talked with many different people and there's like different flavors of calling, especially when you're in the realm of coaching, which I don't know. It's fair for me to broadly put you in that category of coaching. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll accept that.
So there are some people that are multipliers, right? And so they actually would have given the opposite answer to that question. They would have said, I like it when things are healthy and then I multiply them. And then there are people that are fixers that are more like, I like things that are broken and I like to go in and take those things that are broken and fix them. What would you, I think you're more of a fixer based on what you said. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure. I did say, I like it when things get messy because that's where I can provide the greatest value.
Yeah.
But it's also really, really rewarding. I've got a client that told me probably a year ago, he said, since we started working with you, we've doubled our revenue and quadrupled our profit.
Love it.
You know what? That's really fun.
Motivating, yeah.
But if,
yeah.
I guess I would challenge, I'm going to reject your question, I guess, Johnny. Are you this or are you that? Because I don't think it's an either or thing. I think that for me, I am about helping you, Johnny, live your ideal life and live your calling in a way that overflows into the lives of the people around you.
Yes.
And
yes,
I believe in, and not everybody doesn't have to embrace my philosophies, but I believe in other-oriented, nonviolent, enemy-embracing, self-sacrificial love.
Yes.
And I also believe that it's really difficult for you, Johnny, to live that way, enemy-embracing, self-sacrificial, nonviolent, other-oriented, to live that way if you're also worried about making payroll.
Yes.
and so how do How do we
Yeah.
arrange your life and equip you in such a way that you can overflow into the lives of the people around you and enable you and enable them to at least be able to think about living in that kind of love? Because I believe that that's the way that Jesus loved.
Yes.
And that's not like I'm not saying I think this is the best way. I'm just reading the Gospels and saying, well, this is what Jesus says,
Yes.
and so he's probably right. I'm not going to disagree with him on that. So
Yes.
that's my focus, and sometimes that means maximizing and elevating, and sometimes it means fixing broken things, and sometimes it
Yes.
means both. But neither one of those two things is the goal. The goal for me is helping people live like Jesus, even if they don't believe in Jesus, or even if they don't agree with Jesus.
Yeah. So you do work with then both Christian and non-Christian clients.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I've got probably, I'm going to pull up rough numbers here. 2/3 of my clients are for profit, 1/3 are nonprofit. Probably a third to a half of my clients are faith-based, and a lot of those are nonprofits, but some are for-profits. They're regular businesses that are owned and run by people who want to follow Jesus
Yeah.
and want to align everything around that. But yeah, I work with both, certainly.
So usually when you're, you know, in the early process of working with somebody and they're deciding if they want to work with you, there's often a moment, right, where it's like you realize and or they realize, okay, this is the person that I want working with me. Um, what are the indicators? What are the indicators that, as far as you can tell, of people that are going, what are their circumstances? What's the challenge? What's the question they're asking that tends to make them a good fit for you?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that they've got this sense that they should be doing better than they are. And they're not making enough profit, or they can't get enough from their people. Like, I've got phenomenal people and I've got phenomenal customers and I've got phenomenal products. Why are we still struggling?
Mm,
Or, I've read all the books, I'm doing the stuff. Like, why isn't this stuff working? So, and it's not that things are bad. I spoke to a company this morning that is pretty large. They've got hundreds of people, which is large, in my world, hundreds of
right.
people. And it's like, things are going really well, but we're just looking at the political landscape, and we know that some things are going to have to be different in the next few years. And so it's people saying, 1 + 1 + 1 should equal 5, but instead 1 + 1 + 1 is equaling, 2.6, for whatever
Yeah.
reason in my company.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could probably figure it out by myself, but I think, I heard about this EOS thing, and I got a buddy that uses EOS, and she said that I need to check it out, and so here I am. Now that's what usually happens
Yeah.
is somebody is struggling, they talk to another business owner that runs on EOS or another nonprofit leader, and they say, you should talk to Joel, and that's how it usually starts.
Are nonprofits a strong focus for you?
Yes. I've been doing this 11 years now, and early on, I tried to focus on nonprofits. I tried to get nonprofit clients. I tried to go to nonprofit events, and I got absolutely nowhere. But still, a lot of nonprofits find their way to me,
Yeah.
and I love working with them. And most EOS implementers will work with nonprofits, but prefer not to. But there's a growing
Yeah.
subset of us that really recognizes that there's a lot of power in what EOS can do for nonprofits, and are excited about that. And so I'm one of the leaders in that kind of sub community of the people who have this belief and are really championing the nonprofit world.
And what makes you excited about working with nonprofits?
Changing the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I talked to, well, nobody else knows this because they weren't on our call, 4 hours ago.
Yeah.
But you and I were talking to another friend that you introduced me to that is transforming the local church in a way that I've never heard before, and is operations minded. And he's not running on EOS, but
Yeah.
he's thinking the same way. And maybe he will at
Yeah.
some point, but he's thinking the
Yeah.
same way. And the nonprofits that I get excited about working with aren't the nonprofits that are hanging out trying to create a country club. They're the nonprofits that are changing the world.
Yes.
Most, yeah, most of my nonprofits serve kids in some capacity.
Yeah.
And so that's fun. Most of them are charities, not all. I've got some that are, 501c4 or some other form of a nonprofit. But they're doing things in transformative ways that the market doesn't necessarily understand.
Yes.
That innovation is really fun. I am not a natural innovator,
Yeah.
maybe the way you are.
Yeah.
But I'm always excited about being with people who are innovators, which is why
Yes.
you and I connected.
Yes.
How many
Yeah.
people reach out to me on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
1,000 every day. And how did you and I
Yeah.
get connected? I was like, this guy is kind of he's got an innovation bent and he follows Jesus. I'm like, okay, now I'm excited to talk.
Dude, I love it, man. I can see that. And now that traces all the way back to the calling, right? Like I feel like I can tie the thread, back to that defining moment and, being deeply impacted by an experience that you were having and it's transformative. And ultimately the way it's spilling out in your life since then is that you do want to change the world, right? You do want to change the world for the better. You do want to help equip. And I love that. I love this. Both Christian and non-Christian enterprises to be free to serve the world at their best, and the highest and the best of the best would be what you described as self-sacrificial. Say that again. Say it how you said it. The love, how you define love in the gospel.
Self-sacrificial, other-oriented, non-violent, enemy-embracing love.
Yes. Yeah. And so you're equipping. so even in your work with non-Christian organizations, that's the goal you're shepherding towards in some way, shape, or form. Is that
Absolutely.
fair to say? Because
Jesus
that is a
was
kind
right.
of yeah.
Jesus was right, regardless of whether or not people acknowledge that, and regardless of
Yeah.
whether or not people want to follow Jesus. But if I can make the world look a little bit more like Jesus,
Yeah.
even if people don't recognize that, like, I'm okay with that.
Do you ever feel? I'm going to take a risk and ask a weird question. Do you ever feel like you're having church with people that are not Christians? Have you ever felt that?
I have, not as much as I would like. I mean, I wish
Yeah.
I could say that every time my clients are in my office, it's like church.
Yeah.
Because church isn't about, did we sing worship songs and have a sermon? It's about
Yeah.
living the way that Jesus lived and serving the way that Jesus serves. And so
Yes.
ideally, every single interaction I have with a client is like church.
Yeah.
I get wrapped up in the details. I get wrapped up in my own self-interests, and I lose track of that at times. So not as much as I would like.
Yeah.
It's not universal, but absolutely. What we're doing, there's a sacredness to what we do with clients.
Yes. I feel that. And I have conversations with people, and we are connecting on principles that are universally true, even though they might not acknowledge that those principles are Christian in origin, right? But deep is still calling to deep. And I love those moments, man. I love them, and they don't happen all the time, but man,
And Jesus isn't the only person, or even the first person, to ever say you should love your enemies. You should. All of those kinds of things. I just believe that he's the perfect revelation of the best way to live, both now and for eternity.
Yes. Yeah, man. Having a little bit of church right now.
Go get him. We're going to pass our offering plate.
So I feel like we've captured a lot. Like just even in just listening to you talk, I feel like there is such a clear snapshot of calling for you, and I even think a sense of who you're called to. You're definitely open to this multicultural experience and being a guest in someone else's culture, which by itself I think is unique, right? Like you're telling me you work with a group of Amish entrepreneurs, like, did I even know that existed? No, I did not know. But you're getting to learn. You're getting to learn. Man, I wonder, just being a fly on the wall, like going back to your history, and so what you learned in India, again as a guest, what you're learning from the Amish as a guest, what you've learned in these different rooms that you're in. I'm going to ask. This is a hard question, but how do those out of the box things that you learn by being a guest in these different contexts show? Can you recognize how they show up in the way that you do EOS?
Yeah, I think about it like, so I'll give you an analogy. When I was 18 years old, I worked in a corn processing plant, and there was a couple of main buildings, and between this building and this building, there was like a bridge that would cross where the cars were going, and you'd have to go up in this and over and down, and it was like sauna hot up in that when you were crossing through this kind of skyway thing from one to the other. And you'd step up in there and it would like hit you. And it was like a visceral, like, oh my goodness, that like what is happening now is so different from what I came from that it shocked my entire system and it like awakened me.
Yeah.
And you may have had the same experience if you ever came out of a sauna and jumped in the snowbank or, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like going from my little safe bubble to something that's a little bit different, but not very different, doesn't shock me. Going in and saying, okay, I'm going to start working with this Amish client that I have never been a part of their community before. Or I joined probably, I don't know, within the last quarter or two, I joined the Indian Chamber of Commerce. I'm the only white guy there who's not a politician.
Yeah.
And there's a shock to the system that forces you to pay attention and makes, or at least for me, forces me to pay attention, makes me more aware of, I think, what's happening and what the spirit might be doing.
Yes.
And that doesn't happen when I go and I hang out with people that are just like me and it's comfortable.
Yeah. I'm going to let that sit for a second because that's a good word. I love the sauna. I feel that way when I take cold showers, because why? I want to awaken to my senses, right? I want to awaken in my own body. I want to get out of whatever grooves of thinking that I'm trapped in. And a shock to your system can do that. So I love that. So we're going to do big dream, little goal, as we're kind of coming to a close here. So we'd love to hear, again, like, this is a collaborative community where if somebody's listening to this all the way up to this point, they want you to win, because the way that the Lord has fashioned you is breathtaking and amazing. And I love the calling that He's placed on your life. I love the stories and the experience. I love the unique perspective that you bring to the world. I praise God for exactly the way that He made you, and I want you to win. So tell us your dreams, so that, who knows, man, somebody might have the key to a door that you need open that you don't even know you need opened.
Yeah, my dream is really to legitimize the idea of nonprofits running on EOS. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop working with for-profits. 2/3 of my business is for-profit, and the 2-to-1 ratio is probably what I anticipate continuing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just me working with nonprofits. It's legitimizing across the board that this works for nonprofits and it works well for nonprofits. And saying things like marketing and competition and margin are not swear words.
Yeah.
And, no margin, no mission. Like, if there's no gas in the ship goes nowhere.
Right.
And all of my nonprofits are like, I tell them, you are competing. You're competing for donor dollars. You're competing for resources. You're competing for grants. You're competing for volunteers. You're competing for people's attention. So if you don't want to compete, then you might as well just give up. Yeah. So running a nonprofit as a business, 501c3 or 501c4, whatever your tax strategy is. I mean, that's a tax filing status. That's not an operational strategy.
Yeah.
And I believe that nonprofits there's the amount of gains that nonprofits can make through running on EOS are usually greater than the gains that I see for profits as they run on EOS. Because
Wow.
nonprofits tend to have more messes that need to be cleaned up. And I would love to see in 5 or 10 years that when people think about improving nonprofits, they think EOS just as much as today. It's pretty widespread that people think about improving a small to mid-sized business. They say, "Have you heard of EOS? Have you read Traction?" That's the big dream.
Does EOS work out of the box for nonprofits, or have you had to adjust for them?
There are several adjustments, but they are
Yeah.
very small
Okay.
because this is about people. And every organization has people and has money and has finite resources. So are there a few adjustments that I make in terminology or slowing down on this thing or speeding up on this thing? Sure. But I wouldn't say that it's necessarily more. I also work with a lot of wealth management clients. Ameriprise firms, I have continued to send people to me, and I've got a bunch of Ameriprise and a couple that are non-Ameriprise. So do I make adjustments and concessions when I'm working for wealth management clients? Yeah, because I know what they're doing. And I know that if you're an Ameriprise firm, I know that you get a bunch of metrics from the mothership. And so I'm going to take those into account when we're creating your scorecard, and I'm going to ask you for those rather than just working to rediscover that over and over. So yes, I make concessions for nonprofits, but I make concessions for every organization.
Yeah.
Based on who they are and where they're trying to go. And so I don't really feel like it's different running on a nonprofit. It's really just about convincing them that it's okay to operate your organization as a business and to operate on a traditional business structure and to put the needs of the organization first above the needs of any one particular donor or board member. So getting past that hurdle is really the biggest thing. But most nonprofits are, when I start talking about those things, they light up and they're like, finally, yes, this is exactly what we need. So very, very, very few changes with nonprofits.
So let's sit there for a minute, because it sounds like the big dream is to legitimize EOS as viable and desirable for nonprofit organizations. That's the big dream. It sounds like one of your big challenges there is a culture and a mindset of that nonprofits tend to have about themselves, that I probably have also noticed in churches, that I think identify a little bit with, right? Like like for a person to come in and say, "Hey, I want to help you run your church like a really good business," would feel offensive to some. I mean, I was a pastor for 10 years. That would have felt offensive to me. And some hackles would have come up. How do you navigate around that?
Well, a couple things. One is that helping people understand that I genuinely care about nonprofits, I think, is a little bit different than a high-powered stockbroker coming in and throwing elbows around and saying, "We got to redo your profit and loss statement."
Yeah.
Knowing that I care about nonprofits and that this is a part of my calling, I think helps.
Yeah.
And you've heard this with your clients too, like everybody thinks that their industry is unique.
Yeah.
Or like, we're kind of a special circumstance because, fill in the blank. And that's true in very, very few circumstances.
Yeah.
But nonprofits need to be listened to, just like for-profits do. And so making sure that I go into their organization as a listener rather than as a talker. And then helping people understand that it's not my first rodeo with nonprofits and being able to share success stories. And then I always talk about what I call these 6 pillars of readiness, which I mentioned a few of them, of like, you need to believe your nonprofit is a business. You need to be willing to operate on a traditional business structure. You need to prioritize the good of the organization over any one person. The ED has to be accountable for the vision of the organization, things like that, to let them know, like, if EOS will work as long as these 6 things are true.
Yes.
And so as long as these six things are true, this will work great. But if they're not true for you, that's fine. You can do your organization however you want. But if these 6 things aren't true for you, then this isn't going to work. And giving them permission to raise their hand and opt out. Nobody wants to be told what to do. People want to be able to see the options and choose what's best for them. And so I try to make sure that they always know, where's the escape hatch.
Why is there a taboo? Because I feel it. I feel like, why is there a taboo? Like even that first, I think the first pillar, acknowledging that that your nonprofit is a business. I think that's how you said it, something like that. There's like a gut thing that happens for me. What is that? Like
Because
what?
I tell you, it's because so many businesses are run so terribly.
Yeah.
And people are used to corporations, both big and small, doing stupid stuff
Yeah.
and not listening to people and not honoring people and ruining people's
Yeah.
lives and situations and things like that, and not valuing their employees and not valuing their customers and doing shady things. And
Yeah.
so the idea of running your nonprofit as a business, that's what people think. Is they
Mm-hmm.
see, oh, well, Target just laid off 30,000 people or whatever. And I was like, well, I don't want to operate like that. But I tell you,
Yeah.
Johnny, like my clients that are running well, my for-profit clients that are running well, care about their clients and care about their people every bit as much as my nonprofit clients do.
I see. I see.
People aren't afraid of running their nonprofit as a business. They're afraid of running their nonprofit as a crappy business.
But what about a capitalistic enterprise? I think that's where it would, like when I hear business, I don't know how, if I can separate business from capitalistic enterprise that exists to create profit. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Is that not in the definition of business? Is that not in your definition of business?
No, I would say no, that's not in my definition of business. Yes, a business exists to provide value for the shareholders. And so does a nonprofit provide monetary value for the shareholders? No. In that case, it's not a business. But in almost every other way, it is. You
Yeah.
still have to pay your taxes,
Yeah.
and yes, nonprofits, there's different tax things, but there
Yeah.
are some taxes that still need to be paid. You still need
Yeah.
to pass an audit. You still need to manage your books. You still have collections. You still have payables.
Yes.
You still have HR laws that still apply.
Yes.
You still have to grow people. You still have continuing ed. You still have onboarding. You still have competitors.
Yeah.
The difference is really just about what happens with the dollars left over at the end of the day.
That's good, man. And I hope that even can help people that are watching this understand the wrestle a little bit, right? Because it does feel like that what you're up against is more just a conception of what it means to be a business or to function as a business. And so it's okay for like a for-profit business to come and borrow from like, no, actually we're gonna be more ruled by how well we treat our people than how much money we make. It's okay for businesses to do that. Like there's a whole book about those kind of businesses. It's called Small Giants, where these businesses all made decisions contrary to profit, to maximizing profit because they had a higher calling or something higher on their values list.
Yeah, triple
So
bottom line. Yeah.
it's okay for them to do that, but it's like taboo for the nonprofit to dip over into the areas where those businesses tend to excel, which is their clarity and structure and systems and efficiency and accountability, which are not bad words. That's what you were trying to get at. Those aren't bad words. Marketing, not a bad word. If we can somehow divorce it from the package of preconceived notions that it comes ready-made in. No, I don't know if I'm saying it well, but I feel like something you're impacting my thinking. This conversation is changing the way I think.
Yeah, I said this a few minutes ago, but I'll tersify it again. Nonprofits aren't afraid of running as a business. They're afraid of running as a crappy business.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talked about small giants and for-profit organizations that have said it's more about just strictly the bottom line, and they're looking at the best nonprofits out there and saying, what can we take from the best nonprofits and integrate into our business? And that's the same thing that I'm doing with my nonprofits that I work with, is saying, how can we take the best parts of what the best businesses are doing and integrate that into what we're doing without losing who we are?
Right.
We're not talking about
Right.
taking Enron and
Right.
saying, hey,
Right.
what can we learn from
Right.
Enron?
Yeah. 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 And ultimately, that's going to set us free in some way. Right. That's going to set us free to run after the calling that much harder because we're running well and we're running together and we're running in alignment and clarity.
Preach it,
Um,
Johnny, preach it.
it's exciting, bro. No, it's exciting, dude. It's exciting to me, and I've kept you, I've kept you quite some time, but it's, I don't feel bad about it because you're just an interesting dude. So thank you, man. Thank you so much for joining us today for the show.
Yeah, my
I
pleasure.
appreciate you a lot, Joel. And for those of us or those who've watched to the end, thank you for joining us, and we will catch you next time. Take it easy.